Hello and welcome to the bi-monthly Southwest Drought Briefing. I'm Jackie Lussey, Communications Coordinator for the USDA Southwest Climate Hub. These bi-monthly briefings emerged during the 2020 Southwest Drought from the Monitoring and Impact Reporting Team of the Southwest Drought Learning Network. The Drought Learning Network links climate service providers with resource managers and resource managers with one another to increase landscape and community resilience in current and future drought. I want to take a moment to thank my colleague, Rihanna Burnett. Rihanna is the Educational Resources Coordinator for the Southwest Climate Hub. Rihanna will be moderating the questions at the end of the briefing, so please feel free to use the questions feature at any time during the talks. Following this briefing, a recording will be available online on the Southwest Climate Hub info site and the DLN YouTube channel. Today, we will hear from two presenters. Erin Ann Saffel will present our current drought conditions and outlook. She is a state climatologist with the Arizona State Climate Office. Following Erin Ann's presentation, we will hear from Kelly Smith about the Condition Monitoring Observer Reports on Drought, or the Seymour Drought Tool. The Seymour tool allows citizen scientists to submit observation reports on drought-related conditions and impacts, which are then collectively presented in an online map that can be viewed by the public. Kelly is a Seymour coordinator and the assistant director for the National Drought Mitigation Center, which is based at the University of Nebraska. Her research focuses on the impacts of drought. With that, I'll turn it over to Erin Ann for the drought conditions outlook and update.
Hi, folks. Thanks very much. I appreciate that. So I'm going to go ahead and share screen. Hopefully you can see and hear everything. Let me get this all set up correctly. But really good to have everyone here. Welcome to the July Drought Learning Network for the Southwest. So it's a drought briefing. We'll go over some information. I hope you've had a safe and enjoyable monsoon so far. I'm actually located in Phoenix, and we've had 2 days so far this July below 100 degrees. We haven't had that happen since 2022. The last 2 summers have been really hot and dry across Arizona and the Southwest. And the last summer, so 2024, was the hottest June to October for the Southwest. So it's nice to have a bit of a break. I'm going to provide some of those numbers for temperature and precipitation for the Southwest. So that means when we're looking at those Southwest numbers, that's kind of what you'll see. I'll refer to the 4 states, so Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, all together as the Southwest. I mentioned the hot summer we all had last year, and unfortunately, those warmer temperatures have continued this year. You can see in the chart, so that January was a bit cooler than normal, but February to June have all been above average for the Southwest. I'll read some information about the individual states as well. It gives a good context to have that information. So looking at June, or actually we'll look at January to June, we'll look at the average temperature for the past 6 months. So Utah had their 8th hottest January to June on record. New Mexico, 16th hottest. Colorado 24th hottest, and Arizona has had their 12th hottest January to June on record. If we go back the last 12 months, that includes what we all experienced last summer. So July 2024 to June 2025, those last 12 months, Arizona had their 2nd hottest July to June on record. Colorado had their 10th hottest July to June on record. New Mexico, their 4th hottest, and Utah, their 2nd hottest July to June on record. Looking at precipitation, so we'll look at those last 6 months, January to June this year. The Southwest has mostly been dry, so looking at those 4 states on the map, mostly dry. Looking at, you can see Utah, you can see Arizona, and then western Colorado and western New Mexico. So if you pop over to eastern Colorado and New Mexico, you can see that they've been above average for January to June. So let's just visit a little bit of those individual states as well. So January to June, the past 6 months, Arizona and Colorado both have had their 26th driest January to June on record. New Mexico's been okay, about Midland, 60th driest, Utah, 17th driest. But if we look at those last 12 months, so July 2024 to June 2025, Utah had their 12th driest, New Mexico 38th driest, Colorado 48th driest, and Arizona had their 5th driest July to June on record. So fortunately, we all know what can happen often in July. July is typically a wetter month for the Southwest, and you can see that same amount of activity there in eastern Colorado and New Mexico. So taking a look at the map for the precipitation, you can see the green coming out, which is above average for the month of July, July 1st through July 21st. So up to date. Thunderstorm activity also helps cool off temperatures. So if you look in Arizona, kind of in the middle part there, that's where our Mogollon Rim is in central Arizona. And they've been doing okay. So we got a little bit of green there, but you'll also see a little bit of the blue if you look at the map for the temperatures. So the departures from the normal temperatures, seeing the blue on those temperature maps shows that it's been cooler than normal. So that really does show how thunderstorms can cool down those temperatures. And we've been experiencing that with July, with precipitation a little bit better, cooler temperatures. Uh, it's interesting to know a lot of central and southern Arizona folks head up there in July to cool off. So we hope everyone is staying safe. Now, looking at the monsoon season to date, now a little bit of background on the monsoon. With that precipitation, we start counting that precipitation on June 15th. We did have a really good wet June in a lot of locations because early June we had some tropical moisture in. But as it's tropical moisture and it happened before June 15, it doesn't come into our monsoon season numbers. The last two monsoon seasons have been really dry, so it's good to see more monsoon activity. And it's also important to understand that monsoon precipitation is delivered differently than winter precipitation. So we get the cumulonimbus clouds that come in, you get that precipitation, that convective thunderstorm activity, and it's kind of isolated. So it's not unusual if you're looking at the Arizona map showing where it's been wet more than normal so far for the monsoon season. You can see that there are just isolated areas of green in Arizona. And that's the nature of what we experience with our monsoon precipitation. Now, if you pop over to New Mexico, they've been doing really well. And that's also not unusual when we're looking at a fairly good monsoon activity because we'll typically see that monsoon moisture pulling into New Mexico. And then later on, in later July, sometimes in August, we'll see that kind of pull over into Arizona. Hopefully we'll see that happen. Really what we're looking for is that monsoon ridge, that area of high pressure that sets up and pulls that moisture into the southwest. And that's what really helps us build thunderstorm activity. So New Mexico doing really well. We're not even halfway through the monsoon season. Things can always change, but we do want everyone to know that every monsoon season you get the potential for flash flooding, you get lightning, you get dust storms, you get heat. And so everyone should always pay attention to what's going on with the weather. I do want to talk a little bit about a water year and where the Southwest stands for the water year. So a water year runs from October 1st to September 30th. And that's the calendar used to manage water in the United States and in Canada. The Southwest, we had that hot and dry monsoon last year. We had a hot and dry fall. We had a hot and dry winter. Spring ended up being a bit wetter, but it was still warm. So when you're looking at from October to June, you're seeing that temperatures are above average in the Southwest and precipitation mostly, as we've identified before, looking at those dry areas, especially Utah, Arizona, the western side of Colorado and New Mexico. Eastern side looking good for Colorado and New Mexico to date. But taking a look at where the Southwest stands with that precipitation, looking at that, the Southwest is sitting at the 34th driest October to June on record. But they've been pulling in 80% of the long-term precipitation. That's for those four states altogether. That's not individually for each individual state. If you look at that map, you're going to see that there are different weather stations that are showing those gauges. A lot of them in the browns are showing those gauges somewhere in their top 10 driest water years to date. When you see those gauges with the green, those are showing their top 10 wettest to date for the water year. So you can see Arizona, Utah, and those western gauges in Colorado and New Mexico still doing those same things with that lack of precipitation. If we were to zoom into the individual states, the water year for Arizona so far to date, so that's October to June, the eighth driest October to June on record. Colorado, 50th driest, so that's 50th driest October to June on record. New Mexico, about Midland again, so 60th wettest, and Utah, 12th driest, so that's looking October to June. I do bring in temperatures. I think it's important to also take into account what's been going on with temperatures. So we're looking at water year October to June temperatures. Utah, the fourth hottest. New Mexico, the fifth hottest. Colorado, the 10th hottest. Arizona, the sixth hottest. And looking at those really hot and dry conditions. So again, reminder that really hot and dry summer, fall, and winter. So I pulled in the last year. That's what we're looking at here with our short-term drought in the Southwest, pulled in all of that information. And you can see that comparing what's happened a year ago, July 16th, 2024, to current July 15th, 2025, you can see that there's been an advance with during that period of time from last summer. I pulled in April. I wanted to pull in April this year because we had just been experiencing a really hot and dry summer, fall, and winter. And so I pulled in April to see the accumulation effects that we're seeing there. And you can see areas of exceptional drought in Arizona and New Mexico. So this is April that we're looking at, the middle map right in through there. Much of those states showing extreme drought. Utah had 41% of their state with severe drought in April. Colorado had a combined 37% amount of their state with moderate and severe drought in April. So here comes the monsoon season, a little bit more precipitation coming in, and looking at the recent drought map. So July 15th of this year, monsoon activity you can see has helped slightly improve areas in Arizona and New Mexico. If you go to western Colorado, you're going to see a slight increase in severe and extreme drought since last April, this past April. Utah did see a slight decrease in extreme drought since April, but it's now showing an increase in moderate and severe drought across the state. So again, bringing in those temperatures as well as the precipitation. And that's what we're seeing here with the SPEI 24-month map. And so it's going back the last 24 months. SPEI stands for Standardized Precipitation and Evapotranspiration Index. And so what that means is it's taking into account the hotter temperatures that can impact drought conditions. So you're getting the precipitation, but you're also getting the thirstiness of the atmosphere. And so looking at those last 24 months, you can see that Arizona, Utah, definitely dealing with some deficits. Western New Mexico, Western Colorado, seeing those deficits. But when you pop over on the eastern side, the long-term surplus, Northeast New Mexico, Colorado, Southeast, you're seeing that you're having a little bit of a long-term surplus, which is a good thing. Now we'll take a look at kind of the outlooks, what we expect to see happening in August. So for August, the Climate Prediction Center is giving equal chances for precipitation in the Southwest. So you're looking at that map, it shows all white and it says equal chances for our 4 states that we pay attention to for the Southwest. And what that means is there are equal chances for it being dry, average, or wet when we're looking at precipitation in August. It's not unexpected to see those monthly temperatures in August, definitely likely above or leaning above. It's what we've been seeing with those temperatures. Have they been increasing with those monthly outcomes? But August statistically is the wettest month for Arizona and New Mexico. And you can see that it's also one of the wetter months for Colorado and Utah. So fingers crossed that we get a little bit more precipitation in August. We'll have to wait and see for sure. And then looking at the seasonal outlook from the Climate Prediction Center. So this is August, September, October. Now we're moving into drier months for the Southwest. And the CPC is showing that the Southwest, so we're looking at those 4 states, probably when we're looking at the Southwest probability, mostly leaning below precipitation activity. There's also some equal chances when you see southern Arizona, southern New Mexico, but again, have to wait and see how that lands. I did want to pull this out for the drought outlook, looking at for the Southwest. Much of the Southwest is persisting with the expectation from July to October, looking at that drought tendency to persist. You can see that we've got that red color showing drought persist. But if you look down in New Mexico, Arizona, the potential could be that drought will improve slightly as long as we get some more monsoon precipitation. That'll probably impact and be helpful. But you do see a little bit of drought development in the Four Corners area in particular. So Colorado and Arizona, seeing that development is a potential as we head out of the monsoon season and into fall. So that's what we're seeing right now. I'm happy to answer any questions, but thank you very much for your time.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Erin Ann. And now we'll head over to Kelly Smith to hear about the Seymour Drought Tool.
Thanks, Jackie. Okay, are you seeing my screen? I'm going to be chatting about condition monitoring observer reports. This is a system that helps us see more drought. It helps fill in where the data and the instrumental records maybe fall short or don't tell the full story. This is a way for people to contribute their regular observations so that we see how drought is having effects in different places, whether or not there's a weather station nearby. It can help fill in the record. The Condition Monitoring Observer Reports, Seymour, is an input to the U.S. Drought Monitor. Individual observers could be extension or farm service agency personnel, could be a farmer, a rancher, water supplier, homeowner, a natural resources professional, a field worker, someone in the climate business, or an outdoor enthusiast. That's how I usually list myself when I submit Seymour reports, because I'm getting outside and enjoying what's there. And really anybody can do it. There's no sign up procedure, and there's some guidance online for getting started. I'll share that with you in a minute. Um, but it can be people in any of these roles. It can also just be someone who's motivated to talk about how drought is affecting them. So these geographically dispersed observations get filtered. They go into a Seymour system, the system that puts them on a map. I'll show you that in a minute. We're using the Survey 123 intake application from Esri, and it goes onto an ArcGIS online map. And usually it's state climatologists or drought assessment teams, occasionally a producer organization or a state agency that will use this information for their own decision making, especially drought assessment team or state climatologist might be filtering information recommendations to U.S. drought monitor authors. And I've very frequently seen them incorporate Seymour reports along with other data that they're looking at to explain how drought is affecting people in their particular state. So just a very quick overview. Seymour is a system for collecting crowdsourced reports on drought-related conditions and impacts. We're using off-the-shelf Esri technology, which both gives us some capabilities we wouldn't have otherwise, and it also introduces a quirk or two into the system. This is the address of the Seymour landing page. That's also where this QR code goes. From the landing page, you can view the reports on a map. You can submit reports on a form. You can also access other resources about it, including a fact sheet that walks you through getting started, especially the first time. If you're using mobile, that takes a little more attention. And then some recruitment materials. If you follow the related publications link, you see case studies about how North Dakota has made use of it, all kinds of resources. And then the videos are also, they're just a few minutes long and they're pretty informative. Those also kind of walk you through getting started with Seymour. I just want to highlight a couple of examples of good practices. In this case, for a while we had an observer from Greenville County, South Carolina, who would submit weekly photos of the same location. She did this year in, year out, dry conditions, wet conditions, and it built up a great photo record. So on the left, you see what this pasture looks like in near normal conditions in November of 2022. And on the right, you see what it looks like, the same pasture in severely dry conditions, same time of year, a year later. So for those of us, we kind of get used to the colors of the landscape where we live. So this helps me better interpret, it's a little greener on the left. It helps me better interpret what I'm seeing. And I think that's true for drought monitor authors and other people. It's this kind of seeing things through local eyes that helps us understand how drought may be affecting a landscape. One state, North Dakota, has made particularly effective use of the Seymour system. They've persuaded, and it might have just been a coincidence because the state climatologist sat really close to the director of state extension at one point. So they've got it kind of built into the job responsibilities for extension personnel who are part of a livestock network in North Dakota to submit one report for each county during the growing season. So you see this very consistent pattern over time and also over space. And North Dakota is unique in this, and I think they probably have some of the Seymour reports that the state climatologist and the state assessment team probably trusts the most because they're coming from a kind of a calibrated extension network, calibrated in the sense that the people have conversations about what they're seeing and how to report it and how it is and isn't used in the drought monitor. As I mentioned, there is a case study about that in the related documents link. Okay, so I'm about to take you through a live demonstration of uploading a Seymour report. This is always exciting for me because you never know if the technology is going to work the way that you hope it will. This is my bicycle out at Pioneers Park. There's a bison prairie. It's about 5 miles from my house, and it's a nice ride with some hills that I might not otherwise undertake. So I try to do this once a week during the growing season. So this is to show you that you can go from you have your mobile with you, you ride your bike to a spot, you walk to a spot, maybe it's your a spot on your farm while you're checking your crops in your pickup truck. You take a picture, and if you've got an internet connection, you can upload it on the spot using your mobile device. And then you can go find your dot on the map, which is always kind of gratifying. You click on any of these dots, and the reports and photos will pop up. You do have a choice about whether you want to upload it on the spot from where you are or get back to someplace with a better internet connection. You can do it from a mobile or from a desktop. Okay, and without further ado, I will switch to a live upload demo. Okay, so this is the Seymour landing page with all the resources that I highlighted earlier, the videos, the links to different resources. What I'm going to do is choose Submit a Report, and it pulls up the survey form. This is Esri's Survey 123 app. And it invites me to change the language. You can see up here that it's in English. I'm going to leave it in English. Currently, Spanish is our only other choice. And it tells you where you can go find your report. We'll do that in a minute after I've finished submitting. So the first thing it does is ask me to select a state or territory. This is a quality control step. It doesn't actually place the marker on my map, but it will register an error message until I have correctly placed the marker in a location that is consistent with Lancaster County, Nebraska. So it says, where are you? And what I'm going to do in order to place this correctly, right now it's kind of showing you a generic University of Nebraska location in Lincoln, but I'm going to be more precise than that. I'm going to Pioneers Park in It's pretty close to the nature center. There we go. So I can type in an address or the name of a place and it will go there. So this is a little bit southwest of Lincoln. Then I'm actually going to click and drag to position where's the thing I can click and drag? The marker a little bit more exactly. There we go. I moved it. I'm clicking right there next to a pond, and it's actually this whole little loop of the bison enclosure where I was. And you notice that it stopped being the pink error message color when I selected a location within Lancaster, Nebraska. Then what is the date? It defaults to today, but it was actually yesterday that I was out there, so I'm changing the date. How dry or wet is it? I'm choosing near normal. I think we're technically still in drought, but it's been pretty rainy lately, and I think there's a general expectation that most people, observers such as myself, would not be thinking on the length of time span that the drought monitor is thinking on. So to me, it's near normal and maybe a little bit wet even. There's a question about how much experience do you have there? I will admit that I've lived here for quite a long time. I've seen it like this a lot of times. And I can skip some of these questions if I don't want to go into this much detail. A lot of times extension personnel reporting on a county do make very good use of this and provide some really good detail, but I actually haven't driven all over the county, so I'm not making a wider report than that. So reporting on normal or wet conditions, I'm just going to say they're normal for this time of year, possibly even more green than usual. It's definitely pretty humid. This first block of questions is for reporting on normal conditions rather than drought conditions. And we do, as I mentioned, encourage people to report on conditions throughout the year, wet and dry. So there are also, I'm not going to use this block, crop production impacts, livestock production impacts, and I will report down here on recreation or tourism. I'm going to report that there was a little bit of a less appealing landscape because the pond was kind of low. Sorry. less water. Sorry, that's the one that I meant to choose. Sometimes it's tricky to figure out exactly how the impacts fit into our question blocks. If they're a little bit, if they're not as sector focused as some of the crop and livestock ones. Okay, uploading photos. I am gonna go to my desktop where I have a selection of photos ready for us. That's going to make me do them one at a time. And I've labeled them. You can see in this case, I've pre-labeled them north, south, west, and pond. And I have also pre-written the caption so that you don't have to watch me struggle to type accurately. So I'm saying that photos are looking north over the pasture, north over the pond, which is still a little bit low. And these are pictures I take whenever I'm out there. So there's pretty good sequence of pond pictures. South over the pasture and west, where this was kind of fun. I was out there early. Let me see if I can make that one bigger. I don't know if you can see that, but there were 10 bison. Kind of one of the looked like a younger one was actually kind of rolling around in the grass. It looked like they were enjoying the early morning, so that was kind of fun. And then the pond photo is maybe one of the, besides the pasture conditions, I also show the pond photo, and you can kind of tell how close the water is to the pilings on this. It's getting higher, actually, but it still looks a little bit low. I should get the city of Lincoln to paint some elevation markers on the pilings, and that would be informative. Okay, so I've uploaded photos, I've uploaded a description, I've checked off some of the impacts. As I mentioned, I'm calling myself an outdoor enthusiast, and my display name is a version of my name. A display name you can choose, it can be your real name, like it can be like Happy Farmer 34. It just helps you, it's one way that you can find your reports quickly. And then we don't put your actual name or your email on the public facing part of the app, but we do retain that information and send you reminder emails occasionally and provide that to state officials who might be assessing drought. So I'm clicking submit. And it's giving me a thank you message. All right, let's go see if we can find this photo on the map, the photos on the map that I just uploaded. And sometimes it can be a little slow to load. So if you apply filters, it cuts it down nicely. So I'm going to check off from the past 7 days. And I'm pretty sure this is me right here. Going to click on this little near normal dot. And it appears over here it pops up here and also over on the right. So yeah, there are my photos. There's the looking north across the pasture. And there's the pond photo. That one's looking south. It's kind of a pretty view, but for people who know how to interpret pasture views. And there's the bison again. Okay, so that is, let's see, that concludes the official demo. Does anyone have any questions, or I might have a concluding slide. Let me see. Oh, one final thought is that states, an individual state can tailor the form or the messaging on Seymour if they want to. Montana has used this very effectively, we have a version of the form in Spanish and in English for the Caribbean as well. So these are where you can find all things Seymour, condition monitoring or observer reports at the Seymour_drought, go.unl.edu/Seymour_drought, and related public tool is the Drought Impact Reporter. Any questions? Okay, thanks very much.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say Susan had sent through a question asking about the precip measurable rain 25 miles south of Gallup. And Erin Ann was kind enough to look that up. And she said that it's just been pretty dry so far this year. So from January to July, precip is only showing 2.19 inches. So I'll send it back to Jackie and thank you, everyone.
Okay, great. So that concludes our drought briefing. Our next briefing will be in September. Also, the Southwest DLN annual meeting will be virtual this year, and it will take place in October on the 21st and 22nd. So hopefully we'll see you all there. Thank you so much.